Canadá acaba de darle un golpe directo a Donald Trump y a todo su régimen dentro de Estados Unidos. El primer ministro de Canadá, Mark Carney, fue un invitado sorpresa dentro del Festival de Cine dentro de Toronto. Y no decepcionó para nada porque miró directamente a la cámara y dijo lo siguiente: Donald, si estás viendo esto, no empujes demasiado a un canadiense. El día siguiente, el primer ministro Mark Carney dio un poderoso discurso en Ontario, donde habló sobre la importancia de comprar productos canadienses y de impulsar a Canadá para que establezca socios comerciales más confiables afuera, por supuesto de Estados Unidos, y desarrollar relaciones más fuertes con el resto del mundo, diciendo adiós a Estados Unidos de América. Además, con Canadá enfurecido, ha surgido un héroe en Charlie Angus, líder de la gira de resistencia, demostrando que los canadienses están listos para luchar. Ya han demostrado este espíritu combativo y resistencia continua dentro de Canadá. Aquí tenemos al primer ministro Mark Carney hablando en el Festival de Cine que se celebró en Toronto. Miren por favor.
Our current times make them all the more precious. We're in a more dangerous, divided, and intolerant world. In Canada, our sovereignty, our identity has come under threat. And when Canadians heard those threats, they channeled their inner John Candy, stood up, elbows up, wrote our own lines. Cela nous rappelle que nous sommes maîtres chez nous. We have our own plans. I'm almost done. Don't worry. I'm almost done because I didn't move the watch. As Uncle Buck said, I spent a lot of time on this speech. As Uncle Buck said, I don't think I want to know a 6-year-old who isn't a dreamer. Okay? Shimon Peres, I don't think he saw Uncle Buck, but he expanded on this. And he said, and I quote, "A young person is someone whose dreams are bigger than their accomplishments." Okay. Canada is a story whose best chapters are yet to be written, not least because we're a country that welcomes the world's storytellers, celebrates their stories, and grows with them. So TIFF at 50 is just starting out. Thank you for the honor of helping to open this. Merci. Enjoy the film. Et vive le Canada.
Luego, en Ontario, el primer ministro Mark Carney habló sobre cómo las relaciones entre Canadá y Estados Unidos han sido irreparablemente destruidas, y de cómo Canadá ha seguido adelante estableciendo nuevas relaciones y diciéndole adiós a la relación que tenían anteriormente con Estados Unidos. Miren el clip, por favor.
The world is changing rapidly. The largest economy, the United States, is fundamentally reshaping all of its trading relationships. And we're moving from an age that lasted decades, an age when free trade was a motor of global economic growth, to a new age, an age of economic nationalism and mercantilism. You know, the U.S. tariff rate is now the highest it has been since the Great Depression in the 1930s. And these tariffs are being applied to all countries on nearly all goods. And the changes in U.S. policy go beyond tariffs. Countries now must, in effect, buy access to the world's largest economy through investments, through unilateral trade liberalization, and policy changes in their home markets. And all the while, the transformation of global trade is occurring against a backdrop of wider economic disruptions, of geopolitical realignment, of AI and other technological transformations, and the necessity, the imperative of a shift to a greener economy. What's going on is not a transition, it's a rupture. And its effect will be profound. Workers displaced from their jobs. Supply chains that have existed for decades disrupted. Companies forced to change where they find their materials and their products. And all of this is causing an extreme uncertainty that's holding back massive amounts of investment and, as a consequence, slowing economic growth. Just this morning, we see the impact in today's employment report in Canada, with unemployment rising across regions and sectors. This makes decisive action crucial. To be clear, We're in a position right now where Canada currently has the best trading deal with the United States of any of their trading partners. 85% of our trade with the US is now tariff-free. We have the lowest tariff rate of any country in the world. But we also know that given all those changes, given the rupture, we can't rely on our most important trading partner as we once did.
Aquí el primer ministro Mark Carney habla de ver más allá y de sencillamente ya no tener ningún acuerdo a futuro con Estados Unidos. Mira, por favor.
Given that we can't control what other nations do, Canada's government is focused on what we can control. And that means building our strength at home, building Canada strong. That means giving our workers and our companies the tools they need, retraining our workers, transforming our strategic sectors, creating entirely new industries, and being our own best customer by buying Canadian. And to these ends, our new government is embarking on an ambitious plan to secure a new era of prosperity out of this age of adversity. Our new industrial strategy will help transform our economy from being overly reliant on the United States to one that is more resilient to global shocks. A new economy that's built on the solid foundation of Canadian industries, Canadian workers, and it's bolstered by diverse international trading partners. To drive this transformation, we've just launched the Major Projects Office. Its job is to fast-track major nation-building projects.
Volviendo al Festival Internacional de Cine de Toronto, me conmueve tanto ver a un líder normal, a una persona sencilla, tranquila, liderando. Quiero decir, en Estados Unidos no tienes esto. Así que cuando veo personas como el primer ministro de Canadá, Mark Carney, subirse al podio dentro del Festival de Cine en Toronto y recibir una ovación de pie, y me conmueve porque realmente es un buen tipo. Mira el clip por ti mismo, por favor.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you very much. Wow. Okay. Clearly, a lot of Canadians have flown in from abroad and haven't known what's going on. But thank you. I'm here, Cameron. Thank you very much. I'm here to take credit for, all those decisions that Justin and the government took. Seriously, I'm here to reinforce the commitment. And honestly, this is it's a great honor. I've been in those seats. It is a great honor to be up here, particularly on the 50th anniversary of the Toronto International Film Festival. For half a century, extending the invitation to the world accepting, bring us your stories. And we'll share ours.
Volviendo al discurso en Ontario, aquí el primer ministro Mark Carney responde una pregunta diciendo que va a mantenerse firme en su apoyo a Ucrania. Mira el clip, por favor.
Prime Minister, you and your office announced yesterday a willingness to support Ukraine with scalable assistance, military assistance to support a lasting peace of the country. But now we've heard the Russian president reject such security assurances. He says that any foreign troops in Ukraine would be a legitimate target. Does that change at all your stance that was announced yesterday?
Look, President Putin is the cause of this war. He has not yet come to terms with the need for peace. We need to maintain, through the coalition, the willing, other allies, the Ukrainian armed forces need to maintain maximum pressure. That pressure has several aspects. First, obviously the Ukrainian forces themselves and ensuring that they are appropriately armed in their valiant fight, and Canada has just reinforced that, as have other allies. Secondly, that pressure is economic. Sanctions. We have put in place sanctions on more than 3,000 individuals, tightening the oil price cap and other sanctions. The next wave of sanctions is being prepared amongst allies, and it will come. And these are having an effect on Russia's economy, and we need to keep there. The third aspect is to make clear that Ukraine will be supported when peace comes, when there is a cessation of hostility. First and foremost, that's the Ukrainian army. But yes, it will need to be backed up by robust and credible security guarantees. That's why Canada is in the coalition of the willing. And through part of that, Mr. Putin is the cause of this war. He's the reason for the killing. He is not going to dictate the terms of the peace.
Ahora, como sabemos, el boicot de Canadá está funcionando en contra de Estados Unidos, aplastando industrias estadounidenses y afectando productos estadounidenses también. No es solo el boicot de Canadá, sino que Canadá inspiró a varios países y a varios estados y a varios continentes. Europa, Australia, India se han dado cuenta de esto y han comenzado a hacer lo mismo. Una de las cosas que aprendimos es que una de las formas en la que Donald Trump está tratando de bajar el precio del huevo, precio que no se ha reducido casi nada, y que por otro lado los precios de los demás alimentos están subiendo. ¿Qué hay del desastroso informe económico de los Estados Unidos? Este es el peor informe de empleo, si no me equivoco, en una generación entera. En fin, lo que aprendimos es que Rusia está suministrando huevos de gallina a Estados Unidos por primera vez en 30 años. Estados Unidos está abriendo secretamente relaciones comerciales con Rusia para traer huevos debido a la escasez en el país. Ucrania había ofrecido cubrir la escasez con sus propias exportaciones, pero Donald Trump prefirió recurrir a su amigo Vladimir Putin. Eso es totalmente ridículo. Totalmente ridículo, y más de uno podría decir que esto es traición. Ahora pasamos con Charlie Angus, quien está hablando sobre cómo el boicot de Canadá está funcionando perfectamente sobre Estados Unidos, y cómo este mismo boicot se ha extendido con el resto del mundo. Así que aquí tenemos a Charlie Angus, presta la atención, por favor.
Canadian boycott is one of the most profound political moments in our nation's history. It's a complete grassroots movement of ordinary citizens who, on their way to work, at the grocery store, at their kitchen table, made decisions about how they were going to live their lives by not engaging and not giving money to the gangster fascists. This is a really, really profound movement because it's not organized. It didn't come from above. It's the only boycott movement that I'm aware of where ordinary citizens just said, nope, we're not going to put up with this. We're not going to go along. So we're going to talk a bit about that. We're also going to talk about why it's so important to have the Midas Network, Midas Canada, our resistance as a voice on these issues, because they're just simply not being covered. What we see again and again with the mainstream media is a failure to capture the moment, to understand that it's not he said, she said when you're dealing with authoritarianism and the breakdown of the rule of law. There's one side, there's the other. One of the fundamental principles we operate here at the Resistance is that in an age of the reoccurrence of fascism, there's no such thing as a bystander. You are either a resistor or an enabler. And to resist takes many forms. And we're going to break that down, and we're going to talk about that because we are going to build this global movement of resistance. That's why it's so important to have this channel to talk about why words matter and what we can do about it. You know, in talking about the boycott, it was really funny. I got a call the other day from a journalist in one of the major Canadian publications. And he was asking me about the boycott. Conversation went on for about 15 minutes. And at the end, I said, can I ask you a question? And he said, certainly. I said, why are you calling me? And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, like, you guys haven't been covering this. I certainly have not been interviewed by anybody in the Canadian media on the boycott in probably about 6 months. And I said, you guys didn't think this would last, did you? You thought this would be a flash in the pan. You thought this would go away. The Canadians would cry themselves back to sleep. And they haven't. So, you know, when I read headlines in the Canadian media, there's not a lot, but, you know, CTV, fewer Canadians involved in boycott was the headline. If you went parsed down, you'd actually see that they did admit that it was having a major impact. My favorite are the right-wing cranks who are so upset that ordinary Canadians have the power now. The Macdonald Laurier Institute, the ultimate right-wing blowhard crank voice of the right wing, their analysis, limited impact of the boycott, not noticed. The Financial Post, no impact. But then you look at American publications. CNBC did a big investigation on the impacts of the boycott and predicted a potential $90 billion hit to the American economy. That's what you're reading in the US publications. Forbes magazine talks about Canada's boycott accelerates. Really interesting stuff from the US publication, The Travel, that they said in one headline, Canada's US travel boycott forces one state to beg for tourists. Too bad, so sad. And they had described Canadians as the United States' friendliest ally up till this year. That last year we spent a whopping $20.5 billion traveling to the United States. And we supported 140,000 direct jobs. That's been wiped out. It's being predicted a possible $29 billion loss to American tourism this year because of the Canadian-initiated boycott. And to our resistors around the world, thank you for joining us and supporting us, because the Travel also talked about that the big spending Europeans, they're not going to the United States.
Y bueno amigos, llegamos al final del video, espero que les haya gustado. Si fue así, les agradecería que me lo pongan en los comentarios. Además, si les gusta el contenido de política estadounidense, les va a encantar suscribirse al canal, ya que subo videos todos los días. Mi nombre es José Alvarado, soy economista y estoy comprometido a informarlos diariamente. Nos vemos en el siguiente video. Adiós.